For decades, one of the greatest mysteries in religious history has intrigued scholars and believers: the enigmatic Book of Enoch. Have you ever wondered why such a profound text, even quoted in the Bible itself, was left out of the sacred canon? Today, we will unravel a truth that few know, exploring historical evidence that may change your understanding of ancient scriptures. This documentary will reveal the most surprising discoveries about the Book of Enoch, including its influence on early Christianity and the real reasons behind its exclusion. If you've always sought answers about the apocryphal texts and want to understand how they connect with your faith, get ready. The following revelations will transform your perspective on the formation of the Bible we know today. In the genealogies of Genesis, among the long-lived generations that preceded the flood, we find a unique description of the seventh patriarch after Adam. The biblical text presents Enoch in a singular way. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis 5:24. This brief passage, seemingly simple, contains one of the greatest mysteries of ancient scriptures and establishes the foundation for one of the most intriguing figures in religious history. Son of Jared, Enoch was born in the seventh generation after Adam, a number that in biblical symbolism represents perfection and completeness. His lineage places him in a strategic position in the narrative of human origins. He is the father of Methuselah, known for being the longest-lived man according to biblical records, and great-grandfather of Noah, the builder of the ark. This genealogical connection is not mere coincidence. It establishes Enoch as a crucial figure in the transmission of divine knowledge through antediluvian generations. Ancient Jewish tradition attributes special significance to Enoch's genealogical order. As seventh after Adam, he represents a turning point in early human history. Ancient rabbis observed that each seventh generation in biblical genealogies often marked significant moments of change or divine revelation. In Enoch's case, this singular position is accentuated by his extraordinary communion with God. What makes Enoch truly exceptional is not just his genealogical position, but the unique description of his relationship with God. The expression "walked with God" appears only twice in the book of Genesis, once referring to Enoch and once to Noah. In Enoch's case, this walk culminated in one of the most extraordinary events recorded in Scripture: his translation to heaven without experiencing physical death. At 365 years, a significant number corresponding to the days of the solar year, Enoch simply was not. This succinct description generated centuries of theological speculation and interpretation. Unlike all other patriarchs mentioned in Genesis, whose death is explicitly recorded, Enoch transcends the common human experience of death. The author of Hebrews later elaborates on this event, stating that, "By faith Enoch was translated so that he should not see death. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God." Hebrews 11:5. Rabbinic writings considerably expand the narrative about Enoch, describing him as a man of extraordinary piety and wisdom. According to these traditions, Enoch not only maintained communion with God in an increasingly corrupt world, but also served as a herald of divine justice, warning his contemporaries about coming judgment. Some Jewish traditions even portray him as a celestial scribe, recording the acts of men and serving as a mediator between the celestial and earthly realms. The figure of Enoch also found resonance in other ancient religious traditions. In Jewish pseudepigraphical literature, he is often portrayed as a visionary who received revelations about celestial mysteries. In some Islamic traditions, he is identified with Idris, a prophet mentioned in the Quran, known for his wisdom and spiritual elevation. During his earthly life of 365 years, Enoch not only walked with God, but also prophesied as revealed in the Epistle of Jude. There we find the only direct quote from the Book of Enoch present in the New Testament, where he prophesies about divine judgment. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on all. Jude 1:14-15. This explicit citation demonstrates that, at least for some New Testament authors, the writings attributed to Enoch carried prophetic authority. Ancient Jewish tradition attributed to Enoch not only exceptional holiness but also a unique role as a vessel of divine revelations. He was seen as someone who, through his closeness to God, received extraordinary celestial knowledge about creation, angels, and the mysteries of the universe. This perspective helps explain why later texts attributed to him found such fertile ground in Jewish and subsequently Christian communities. But if Enoch was such an extraordinary figure with such a unique experience with God, what happened to the book that bears his name? The history of the discovery and preservation of the Book of Enoch is as fascinating as the character himself, involving surprising archaeological findings and revelations that remained hidden for millennia. The story of the rediscovery of the Book of Enoch is one of the most fascinating narratives in modern biblical archaeology. For centuries, this text remained known only through fragments and quotations in other ancient works, its existence hovering like a ghost in the corridors of religious history. The process of its rediscovery and recovery is a saga that crosses continents, cultures, and millennia, revealing one of the most extraordinary stories of textual preservation we know. In 1773, Scottish explorer James Bruce accomplished what many considered impossible. Returning from an expedition to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, he brought with him 3 precious manuscripts of what would become known as First Enoch, or the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. This discovery revolutionized the field of biblical studies, as until then the complete text was considered irretrievably lost to the Western world. The Ethiopian version, preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as part of their canon, had survived through the centuries in Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic language of the region. Bruce's discovery, though monumental, was just the beginning. The Ethiopian manuscripts raised as many questions as they answered. How had this text survived only in Ethiopia? What was its relationship to the original versions? What was its historical authenticity? These questions would remain without definitive answers for almost 2 centuries, until a series of revolutionary archaeological discoveries began to illuminate the mystery. It was only with the Qumran discoveries between 1947 and 1956 that the true antiquity and importance of the Book of Enoch were unequivocally confirmed. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, archaeologists found Aramaic fragments of multiple copies of the book, dating from the Second Temple period, 530 BCE to 70 CE. This discovery not only validated the text's antiquity, but also demonstrated its significant popularity among ancient Jewish communities, particularly among the Essenes, the probable inhabitants of Qumran. The preservation process of the Book of Enoch through the centuries is a remarkable testimony to the tenacity of religious tradition. While the original text was probably composed in Hebrew or Aramaic, it was later translated into Greek, and from this Greek version, the translation into Ethiopian Ge'ez was made. This complex process of textual transmission, crossing multiple languages and cultures, left distinct marks on the text, creating a fascinating palimpsest of ancient religious traditions. Modern analysis of the manuscripts revealed that the Book of Enoch, as we know it today, is actually a compilation of several texts, traditionally divided into 5 main sections: the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the astronomical book, the Book of Dreams, and the Epistle of Enoch. Each section has distinct characteristics and represents different strata of the Enochic tradition, with composition dates possibly varying from the 3rd century BCE to the 1st century CE. The survival of the text through different textual traditions offers fascinating insights into how ancient communities preserved and transmitted their sacred texts. The Greek fragments found in Egypt, for example, show significant variations from the Ethiopian text, suggesting the existence of multiple textual traditions in circulation in antiquity. The Old Slavonic version, to Enoch, presents yet another branch of this rich literary tradition. The study of the Qumran manuscripts revealed surprising details about the book's popularity among the Essenes. The presence of multiple copies suggests that the text was frequently read and studied, possibly playing an important role in the community's liturgical and theological life. The fragments found show signs of frequent use, indicating that the book was not just preserved, but actively used in religious practices. The dating of the different components of the book continues to be a subject of intense academic debate. Linguistic and historical evidence suggests that the oldest parts of the text may date back to the 3rd century BCE, while other sections were composed or edited until the 1st century CE. This chronological breadth reflects the progressive development of the Enochic tradition and its continued relevance to different communities over time. The authenticity and nature of the manuscripts raise fascinating questions about the practice of pseudepigrapha in the ancient world, the attribution of texts to venerable figures from the past. Although the book is attributed to Enoch, scholars agree that it was composed long after the period when the patriarch would have lived. However, this does not diminish its historical and theological importance, as it reflects fundamental beliefs and traditions of Second Temple Judaism. But what exactly does this mysterious book contain that survived through the millennia? Its content, rich in apocalyptic visions, celestial revelations, and moral teachings, offers us a unique window into the religious thought of the intertestamental period, and its revelations continue to fascinate scholars and believers to this day. The content of the Book of Enoch is a complex tapestry of celestial visions, angelic narratives, and apocalyptic prophecies that dramatically expand the spiritual universe described in the canonical texts. Its richness of detail and theological depth made it one of the most influential works of Jewish apocalyptic literature, significantly shaping religious thought for generations. The first and perhaps most extraordinary section, known as the Book of the Watchers, chapters 1 to 36, develops a narrative only briefly mentioned in Genesis 6, 1 to 4. The text presents a detailed account of the sons of God who descended to earth and united with the daughters of men. These celestial beings, called Watchers, are described as a group of 200 angels who, led by Semyaza and Azazel, made a solemn pact on Mount Hermon to abandon their celestial dwelling, attracted by the beauty of human women. The Watchers' narrative is remarkable not only for its drama but for its complex theology of evil. According to the text, these angels not only transgress the boundaries between the celestial and earthly, but also introduced forbidden knowledge to humanity. Azazel is specifically accused of teaching men the art of metallurgy and weapon making, while other angels revealed the secrets of cosmetics, jewelry, sorcery, astrology, and other forms of knowledge considered inappropriate for humanity. The astronomical book, chapters 72-82, represents one of the most intriguing and technically sophisticated sections of the work. In it, Enoch receives detailed instructions about the movements of celestial bodies, solar and lunar cycles, and the structure of the cosmos. The text presents a solar calendar of 364 days, divided into 4 seasons of 91 days each, revealing a deep concern with divine order reflected in celestial movements. This section demonstrates surprisingly advanced astronomical knowledge for its time, although interpreted through a distinctive theological lens. The Parables of Enoch, chapters 37 to 71, introduce some of the book's most significant elements, particularly the figure of the Son of Man. This section presents a developed Christology that has notable parallels with the Gospels. The Son of Man is described as a pre-existent celestial being, chosen by God to execute final judgment and establish the kingdom of justice. This description has profound implications for understanding the development of messianic expectations in Second Temple Judaism. The Book of Dreams, chapters 83-90, contains 2 distinct apocalyptic visions. The first is a prophecy of the flood, while the second, known as the Animal Apocalypse, presents an elaborate allegory of Israel's history, where different animals represent different nations and historical figures. This section is particularly valued by historians for its veiled references to historical events, helping date the text and understand its original context. The Epistle of Enoch, chapters 91 to 108, concludes the work with a series of moral exhortations and prophecies about the final judgment. This section includes the famous Apocalypse of Weeks, which divides history into 10 periods, or weeks, offering one of the first attempts at systematic periodization of world history in Jewish literature. It is in this section that we find the prophecy quoted in the Epistle of Jude, demonstrating its direct influence on the New Testament. A particularly fascinating aspect of the book is its elaborate angelology. The text presents a complex celestial hierarchy with different classes of angels performing specific functions. The 4 archangels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel, are described as the holy angels who watch, each with particular responsibilities in the administration of the cosmos. This sophisticated angelology profoundly influenced the later development of Jewish and Christian demonology. The cosmology presented in the Book of Enoch is equally elaborate. Enoch describes journeys through multiple heavens, encountering personified natural phenomena such as the spirits of thunder and lightning. He observes the reservoirs of winds, the chambers of snow and rain, and contemplates the mysteries of creation. This expansive celestial geography established a paradigm that would influence later apocalyptic literature and medieval understanding of the cosmos. The text also addresses fundamental Theodicean questions, exploring the origin of evil and human suffering. Unlike Genesis's more succinct narrative, the Book of Enoch develops an elaborate explanation for the presence of evil in the world, attributing it primarily to the corrupt influence of fallen angels and their forbidden knowledge. This theodicy had a lasting impact on subsequent religious thought. The influence of these extraordinary revelations was not limited to their period of composition. As we will see next, the impact of the Book of Enoch on early Christianity was profound and lasting, shaping theological thought and religious imagination of Jesus's first followers in ways we are only now beginning to fully understand. The influence of the Book of Enoch on nascent Christianity is much deeper and more comprehensive than many modern scholars initially recognized. Its marks can be found not only in direct quotations, but in the very structure of early Christian theological thought, shaping fundamental concepts about angels, demons, eschatology, messianism, and the very nature of evil. The most explicit evidence of this influence is in the Epistle of Jude, where we find a direct quotation from the Book of Enoch. The author not only quotes the text but treats it as an authentic prophecy, explicitly attributing it to Enoch, the seventh from Adam. This reference is not a casual or peripheral mention. It is an apostolic validation of the book's prophetic authority. The fact that a New Testament author considered it appropriate to directly quote the Book of Enoch suggests that, at least in some early Christian circles, the text enjoyed almost canonical status. The language and concepts of the Book of Enoch echo throughout the New Testament, particularly in apocalyptic writings. The Book of Revelation, for example, shares many elements with Enochian cosmology: powerful angels, celestial books, final judgment, and a new creation. The description of the lake of fire in Revelation has notable parallels with the visions of punishment described in the Book of Enoch. Especially significant is the book's influence on early Christology. The title Son of Man, frequently used by Jesus to refer to himself in the Gospels, finds a rich background in the parables of Enoch. There, the Son of Man is described as a pre-existent celestial figure, destined to judge the world and establish God's kingdom. Concepts that resonate deeply with Jesus' self-understanding and the early church's interpretation of his mission. The archaeological discoveries at Qumran revealed that the Book of Enoch was extremely popular among the Essenes, a Jewish community that shared several beliefs and practices with early Christianity. The manuscripts found show signs of frequent use, suggesting that the text was regularly studied and discussed. This connection helps explain how Enochian traditions influenced the intellectual and spiritual environment from which Christianity emerged. Early Christian demonology owes a particular debt to the Book of Enoch. Its elaborate narrative about fallen angels and their corrupt influence on humanity provided a conceptual framework that early Christians used to understand the origin and nature of evil. The idea of angelic beings imprisoned awaiting final judgment, mentioned in 2 Peter 2 verse 4 and Jude 1 verse 6, derives directly from Enochian traditions. The Church Fathers demonstrated deep knowledge and complex attitude towards the Book of Enoch. Tertullian, in the 2nd century, vigorously defended its authenticity and authority, arguing that its rejection by the Jews was additional reason for Christians to accept it. Clement of Alexandria quoted it frequently, treating it as scripture. Origen, although more cautious, still considered it a valuable source of spiritual knowledge. The book's influence extended beyond theology to early Christian practice. Its emphasis on the importance of the solar calendar and concern with cosmic order may have influenced early discussions about the correct date of Easter and other Christian festivals. Its detailed description of celestial geography influenced the development of Christian art and ecclesiastical architecture. Recent archaeological evidence continues to reveal the extent of the Book of Enoch's influence. Amulets and inscriptions found throughout the ancient Mediterranean world frequently incorporate elements of Enochian angelology. Artistic representations of angels in catacombs and ancient churches often reflect descriptions found in the book. Considering such great influence and authority in the first centuries of Christianity, one question becomes even more intriguing and complex. What led to the exclusion of the Book of Enoch from the biblical canon? The answer leads us to one of the most crucial and controversial periods in church history, where monumental decisions about the nature of the Christian canon were being made. The process that led to the exclusion of the Book of Enoch from the biblical canon is a complex narrative involving not just theological decisions, but also political, cultural, and linguistic dynamics that unfolded over several centuries. To fully understand this process, we first need to understand how the very concept of canon developed in early Christian communities. In the first 3 centuries of Christianity, there was no uniformly accepted canon across all churches. Different Christian communities used different collections of texts, and the line between inspired and uninspired writings was often thin. The Book of Enoch, along with other texts now considered apocryphal or pseudepigraphical, circulated freely and was often quoted by religious authorities with the same weight as scriptures we now know as canonical. The first major change in this scenario occurred in the 2nd century CE, when both internal and external pressures began to force the Church to more clearly define its authoritative texts. The emergence of movements considered heretical, such as Gnosticism, which frequently produced their own sacred texts, created an urgent need to establish more rigorous criteria for accepting religious writings. The main criterion developed for inclusion in the canon was threefold: apostolic authorship or proximity to the apostles, conformity with the rule of faith already established in the main churches, and continuous and widespread use in Christian communities. The Book of Enoch, despite its undeniable antiquity and influence, began to face serious questioning under these criteria, particularly regarding its supposed authorship. Discussions about the canon intensified in the 4th century when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. This new status required a clearer definition of what constituted authorized Christian literature. The Council of Laodicea, held around 363 to 364 CE, represented a decisive moment in establishing a more restricted list of books considered canonical. A crucial point in this process was the position of influential church fathers. Athanasius of Alexandria, in his famous Festal Letter of 367 CE, presented a list of canonical books that essentially corresponds to the current New Testament. Augustine and Jerome, 2 of the most influential voices in the Western Church, expressed specific reservations about the authenticity of the Book of Enoch. Jerome, whose Latin translation of the Bible, the Vulgate, would become the standard text of the Western Church for more than a millennium, was particularly significant in this process. His decision to exclude the Book of Enoch from the Vulgate effectively sealed its fate in the Christian West. Jerome's authority as a translator and scholar established a precedent that would be followed for generations. Linguistic issues also played a crucial role in this process. With the gradual disappearance of Greek and Aramaic versions, and with Latin becoming the dominant language of the Western Church, texts that survived primarily in other languages, such as the Book of Enoch in Ethiopian Ge'ez, naturally lost influence in the main currents of Christianity. The nature of the book's content also contributed to its exclusion. Its elaborate descriptions of angels, cosmology, and supernatural events, although fascinating, began to be viewed with increasing skepticism by a church that sought to establish more systematic and controllable doctrines. The imaginative richness of the text, which had previously been a source of its popularity, now worked against its canonical acceptance. The history of the Book of Enoch's exclusion from the biblical canon offers us important lessons about how religious traditions evolve and how sacred texts are preserved or marginalized. But what does this history mean for modern believers? And what is the current relevance of this ancestral text that so influenced the formation of early Christian thought? The journey we've traveled through the history of the Book of Enoch reveals much more than just the trajectory of an ancient text. It offers us a fascinating glimpse into the development of Judeo-Christian faith and the complex processes that shaped our spiritual heritage. In each chapter of this narrative, we discover layers of meaning that enrich our understanding not only of the text itself, but of the very development of religious thought. What emerges from our investigation is that the history of this enigmatic book is not simply a narrative of exclusion, but a testimony to the rich diversity of ancient religious thought. Its survival through the millennia, even after its removal from the canon, demonstrates its enduring importance and the power of its revelations to capture religious imagination across generations. The providential preservation of the text by the Ethiopian Church allows us today to access insights that would otherwise have been lost to history. For the modern Bible scholar, the Book of Enoch offers invaluable context for understanding the intellectual and spiritual environment in which Christianity was born. Its elaborate descriptions of angels, its apocalyptic prophecies, and its distinctive theology help us better understand the references and allusions found in the New Testament. The book serves as a crucial bridge between the Old and New Testaments, illuminating the development of religious thought during the intertestamental period. The ongoing discoveries of modern archaeology continue to confirm the historical importance of the Book of Enoch. The Dead Sea Scrolls not only validated its antiquity, but also demonstrated its centrality in Second Temple Jewish thought. This material evidence helps us appreciate the fundamental role that the text played in shaping the religious ideas that would eventually give rise to Christianity. For the contemporary believer, the Book of Enoch raises important questions about the nature of divine inspiration and the process of biblical canon formation. Its exclusion from the canon does not necessarily diminish its value as historical testimony of ancient faith or as a source of theological reflection. On the contrary, it invites us to consider more deeply how God revealed himself throughout history and how different faith communities interpreted and preserved these revelations. In a world where we often seek simple answers to complex questions, the history of the Book of Enoch challenges us to embrace a more nuanced understanding of our religious tradition. It reminds us that divine truth sometimes comes through unexpected channels, and that spiritual wisdom can be found even in texts that remained on the margins of mainstream tradition. As we continue to study and reflect on this ancient text, perhaps its greatest contribution is to remind us of the richness and complexity of our spiritual heritage. The Book of Enoch remains as a testament to humanity's profound search for divine understanding and a reminder that the mysteries of faith are often deeper and more complex than our orderly theological categories might suggest.